The first warning came without a sound. Inside the crystal palace of the Veloran Empire, thousands of glowing lights suddenly became dim. The great energy rivers that flowed beneath the palace walls slowed until they looked almost frozen. No alarm rang. No explosion happened. Yet every person inside knew something was terribly wrong. Because the palace only lost its light when the Empress herself was suffering. Empress Illyria sat perfectly still upon her silver throne. She looked calm. She smiled at her advisors. She answered every question with steady words. But no one could ignore the truth. She had not stood on her own feet in 12 days. Every attempt ended the same way. The moment she tried to rise, a sharp wave of pain spread through her entire body, forcing her back into the throne. The Empire's greatest medical experts filled the palace. Some arrived from worlds over 1,000 light-years away. Others brought machines that could see inside living cells. Every hour another specialist entered. Every hour another specialist failed. The neural channels are clear. The crystal nerves show no damage. Her energy circulation is perfect. The muscles remain healthy. The bones show no fracture. Every report sounded hopeful. Yet the Empress still could not stand. The palace slowly filled with fear. Outside, the citizens believed their ruler was deep in meditation. Inside, everyone knew the truth. If the Empress remained unable to walk much longer, powerful noble families would begin fighting for control of the empire. One quiet evening, the oldest palace servant spoke. "There is another healer." The room became silent. One general frowned. "Another surgeon?" The servant slowly shook his head. "No. A human." The room immediately erupted. "A human? Impossible. They barely understand crystal biology. What could a primitive healer know?" The servant remained calm. "He is not a surgeon." "Then what is he?" The old servant answered softly. "He listens with his hands." More laughter followed. The chief royal physician folded his arms. "So, he guesses." "No. He feels." The physician almost smiled. "We require science." The servant nodded. "And yet science has failed for 12 days." Silence returned. The Empress finally opened her eyes. "What is his name?" The servant bowed. "Elias Rowan." "Bring him." 2 days later, a small transport landed outside the palace. No military escort. No expensive equipment. No medical drones. A single man stepped onto the landing platform carrying an old brown case covered with scratches from many years of travel. He looked more like a traveler than a royal healer. The palace guards exchanged confused looks. "That's him. He doesn't even have scanners." Inside the grand medical chamber, dozens of famous physicians waited with crossed arms. Their tables overflowed with advanced instruments. Bright holograms floated across the room. Every eye turned toward the human. Elias simply smiled politely. "Good afternoon." No one answered. The chief physician spoke first. "We have already performed every known examination." Elias nodded. "I'm sure you have. You believe you can succeed where we failed?" "I don't know." The answer surprised everyone. "I won't know until I meet her." No boasting. No challenge. Just honesty. The physicians reluctantly stepped aside. The massive doors opened. The Empress waited near the sunlight pouring through the crystal windows. She studied the human carefully. "So, you are the one who listens." Elias gave a respectful bow. "I try." She smiled faintly. "Everyone else has measured." "What will you do differently?" Elias looked around the room. "So many machines." He gently placed his old case on the floor. Then, he never opened it. The physicians whispered among themselves. "Where are his instruments?" "He forgot them." Instead, Elias slowly approached the Empress. "May I?" She nodded. He placed 2 fingers gently near her shoulder. Not pressing. Not searching. Simply resting there. Then another hand touched the middle of her back. He closed his eyes. The room became perfectly quiet. Nearly 3 full minutes passed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the palace guards stopped breathing loudly. Finally, Elias stepped 1 pace to the side. "Could you slowly lift your left arm?" She did. He watched carefully. Again. She repeated the movement. Then he asked her to turn her head. Then breathe deeply. Then sit. Then stand halfway before stopping. Every movement was slow. Every movement looked strangely simple. The physicians grew impatient. "This proves nothing." Elias ignored them. He walked behind the throne once more. This time his fingers stopped near the lower edge of one glowing crystal plate woven naturally beneath the Empress's shoulder. His expression changed. "There you are." The chief physician frowned. "What?" Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked directly at the Empress. "When did you almost fall?" She blinked. No one had asked that question. She thought carefully. "About 2 weeks ago. The garden bridge. I slipped. I caught myself. I never actually fell." Elias nodded slowly. "I thought so." The room became silent. The physicians looked at one another. None of their reports even mentioned the incident. Elias carefully moved 1 finger less than the width of a leaf across the edge of her shoulder. The Empress suddenly inhaled sharply. "Wait." She froze. Her eyes widened. For the first time in 12 days, the pain moved. Instead of spreading through her body, it disappeared from one side completely. Every physician stared in disbelief. Elias slowly lowered his hand. "I found where it begins." The chief physician stepped forward. "Impossible. Our scanners never detected anything." Elias looked toward him calmly. "They were looking for damage. I was looking for balance." The room fell into stunned silence. No one knew it yet, but that single sentence was about to change medicine across the entire galaxy. The silence inside the Grand Medical Chamber lasted several long seconds. No one moved. No one even looked away from the Empress. She slowly rolled her left shoulder. Then her right. The sharp pain that had ruled her body for nearly 2 weeks was no longer exactly where it had been. It had shifted. The chief royal physician stared at Elias. "What did you do?" "I didn't fix anything," Elias replied calmly. "I only showed her body where the problem begins." Several surgeons exchanged doubtful looks. "That is impossible. Our scanners mapped every nerve. Our energy models are perfect." Elias smiled politely. "They're perfect at finding broken things. But sometimes nothing is broken. Sometimes something is simply out of place." The words irritated many of the doctors. One younger specialist stepped forward. "So you're saying all our machines missed it?" "I'm saying they searched for injury. I searched for movement." The room became quiet again. The Empress slowly stood with help from the throne. This time she remained standing 3 seconds longer than before. Not long enough to walk, but longer than anyone had seen in days. A small smile appeared on her face. "I haven't stood this long since the accident." The chief physician finally crossed his arms. "If you truly understand this condition, explain it." Elias nodded. He picked up a small silver ornament from a nearby table. Holding it between both hands, he gently twisted it. "Imagine a door. The lock works. The handle works. The hinges aren't broken, but the frame shifts by one tiny angle. The door still closes. It still opens. But every movement creates pressure." He placed the ornament down. "The pressure isn't where the frame moved. It's somewhere else." Several physicians looked thoughtful. Others still refused to believe him. The Empress spoke quietly. "So my pain isn't the real problem." "No," Elias answered. "It's only the message." She looked toward the palace window. For 12 days everyone tried to silence the message. They never asked why it was speaking. Those words filled the chamber with uncomfortable silence. The next morning Elias began the first real treatment. Again he refused every advanced machine. Instead, He asked for something strange. A quiet room. No guards. No observers. The request shocked the palace. The Empress herself approved it. Only one person remained inside. Imperial Recorder Seelan. Her job was simply to document everything. Nothing more. Elias asked the Empress to breathe slowly. Not deeply. Naturally. He watched every small movement. Every shoulder lift. Every turn of the neck. Every shift of balance beneath her feet. Then he gently placed one hand beneath her shoulder blade. His other hand rested near the upper spine. Tell me the exact moment you feel resistance. She slowly raised her arm. There. He stopped. Not because of pain. Because he felt something else. A tiny hesitation. Almost invisible. He carefully adjusted the angle of her shoulder. Barely enough for anyone else to notice. The Empress blinked. My breathing. It feels different. Elias nodded. Good. He never forced a movement. He never pushed hard. Each correction was smaller than a heartbeat. The session lasted less than 20 minutes. When it ended, the Empress looked tired. But peaceful. That night, for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, she slept without waking in pain. News spread quietly through the palace. Not officially. Official reports still described her condition as stable. But servants noticed something. The Empress laughed during breakfast. She hadn't laughed since becoming ill. The second treatment came the following day. This time Elias asked her to walk 3 steps. She completed 2. Before stopping. No sharp pain. Only weakness. Excellent, Elias said. The doctors looked confused. She failed. Elias shook his head. No. Yesterday she couldn't begin. Today she stopped. Those are very different things. Even the skeptical recorder wrote those words down. By the 4th session something remarkable happened. The Empress reached the palace garden. She stood beneath the crystal trees where she had slipped weeks earlier. She looked down at the polished bridge. So this is where everything started. Elias nodded. You caught yourself. But one small movement never returned to its natural place. She smiled sadly. I never even felt it. Most people don't. She looked at the human healer. You found something invisible. I found something everyone stopped looking for. Inside the medical academy, arguments exploded. Some physicians demanded Elias explain every technique. Others dismissed everything as coincidence. Chief Physician Varnek refused both opinions. Instead, he personally reviewed every scan taken during the Empress's illness. Hour after hour, he searched the records. Finally, he noticed it. Every machine had automatically centered its measurements on the area of pain. None had compared the balance of the surrounding joints during ordinary movement. They had measured the symptom, never the cause. Varnek quietly closed the final report. Then, in the margin of his official medical journal, he wrote one sentence. We searched where the pain shouted, not where the body whispered. He stared at those words for a long time. Outside his office window, he watched the Empress take another careful step across the palace garden. This time, she didn't need anyone to hold her. And for the first time since Elias Rowan had arrived, even the Empire's greatest physician began to wonder if humanity possessed a kind of wisdom that no machine could ever calculate. On the 13th morning, the Crystal Palace awoke before sunrise. Servants hurried through the halls. Imperial guards stood at attention. Members of the High Council filled the grand audience chamber. None of them had been told why they were summoned. Only one person knew. Empress Illyria. She stood quietly behind the great crystal doors, taking one slow breath after another. Elias Rowan stood a few steps away, carrying the same old leather case he had brought on the first day. It was still closed. The Empress smiled. I never learned what was inside that case. Elias chuckled. Mostly clean cloth, herbal oils, and a few simple tools. She laughed softly. The entire empire feared a box of cloth. The box wasn't important, Elias replied. The hands using it were. The palace bells rang. The giant doors opened. Thousands of eyes turned toward the entrance. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, the Empress walked forward. One step. Then another. Then another. No servants held her arms. No guards supported her. No machines surrounded her. She crossed the entire chamber with calm, steady confidence. The room fell completely silent. Several council members stood in disbelief. Some physicians forgot to breathe. The chief royal physician lowered his head. He had spent 12 days trying to defeat the pain. The human had spent 12 days understanding it. When the Empress reached her throne, she did not sit immediately. Instead, she turned toward everyone gathered. "You believed I was healed by a miracle." She shook her head. "No. I was healed because someone finally asked the right question." Her voice echoed across the chamber. For days, every expert searched for what was broken. But nothing inside me was broken. My body was asking for help. Only one person listened. She looked toward Elias. "Come forward." The human stepped closer. The Empress raised a small crystal medal, the highest honor the Empire could offer a civilian. Every person expected her to place it around his neck. Instead, she lowered it. "I cannot reward you as if you completed a simple task. You have done something much greater." She faced the council. "Today I establish the House of Human Motion." Murmurs spread through the chamber. "It will stand beside our greatest medical academies. It will study movement, balance, recovery, and touch. Our machines will continue measuring. But our healers will also learn to observe." The announcement stunned every physician. Knowledge that had been dismissed only days earlier was now becoming part of imperial medicine. The chief physician stepped forward. He stopped before Elias. For several long seconds, neither man spoke. Finally, the older doctor bowed. It was not a polite nod. It was a full bow of respect. "I believed your methods were primitive." "I was wrong." Elias gently shook his head. "No. You simply trusted the tools you were taught." The physician smiled sadly. "And you trusted your patient." "I did." Later that afternoon, the palace gardens were peaceful again. The Empress walked across the same crystal bridge where she had slipped weeks before. This time, her steps were steady. She stopped beside Elias. "Do you know why I invited you here today?" He smiled. "I have a feeling you'll tell me." She laughed. "I spent my whole life surrounded by people who gave answers before asking questions. You did the opposite." She looked across the shining lakes below. "The Empire needs more people like that." "So?" She turned toward him. "I would like you to stay. Not as my personal healer. Not as a royal advisor. But as a friend." Elias looked surprised. "Friend?" "Yes. I think conversations with you may prevent as many problems as your treatments solve." He smiled warmly. "I'd like that." Months passed. The House of Human Motion welcomed students from dozens of worlds. Young physicians learned to watch people walk before studying their scans. They learned that pain often pointed away from the true problem. Most importantly, they learned never to let technology replace careful observation. Chief Physician Varnek completed the largest medical study in imperial history. Its final sentence became required reading in every academy across the galaxy. "Machines reveal what exists. Careful hands reveal why." The word spread farther than anyone expected. Across hundreds of star systems, human healers received invitations to teach. Alien doctors began working beside human therapists instead of dismissing them. Together, they discovered treatments neither could have created alone. Years later, visitors entering the Crystal Palace always noticed one unusual statue. It did not show a battle. It did not celebrate an emperor. It showed a human standing quietly beside an empress, with one hand gently resting on her shoulder. The inscription beneath it read, "Great discoveries do not always begin with better machines. Sometimes they begin with someone willing to listen." And long after both Elias Rowan and Empress Illyria had become legends, every new healer of the Veloran Empire learned the same lesson on their very first day. Never treat the place where pain speaks the loudest. First find the place where the story truly begins.